Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith, Pennsylvania editor for the Center Square. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Anthony Hennon. So Anthony's been doing a lot of reporting about the train derailment in East Palestine and how that's really impacted the communities in Western Pennsylvania. But it's certainly not the only environmental disaster that region of Pennsylvania has faced in recent years. Anthony, talk to us a little bit about what has happened in recent years.
Yeah, this is just the latest one that's brought this time national attention. I'm looking at the effects of the train derailment in East Palestine and how it's hitting Western Pennsylvania. We don't quite have a price tag yet, on the cost here, but it's going to be hefty. Norfolk Southern has committed to providing $7 million to Pennsylvania so far, though the majority of that is simply to replace fire department equipment and reimbursing some state agencies that have been in the area. We're looking at long-term testing of the air, of soil, of water to make sure there's no negative long-run consequences here. But this is not the only thing that's degraded the environment or affected the landscape around Western Pennsylvania. A big one, of course, is the industrial legacy that comes from abandoned coal mines, which results in acid mine drainage sweeping into nearby streams, creeks, rivers. We've also seen waste coal piles and coal ash heaps that have been an issue and are also very difficult to remediate or make into anything productive after that. And along with coal, we've seen problems with abandoned oil and gas wells. This one is generally huge, and it's unknown how huge of a problem this is. When you look at statistics on this, where anywhere between 300,000 and maybe 800,000 abandoned gas wells across the state. Some of these are just a few years old. Others are decades, if not more than a century old. And fixing that is very costly. Just looking at 30,000 of them that the Commonwealth has estimated that they could plug, we're looking at almost $2 billion. And that's also assuming a relatively low cost to plug these things, usually about 20,000, 30,000. But some of these are much more expensive. And so we have problems here with the impacts on the health of local populations, of the environmental quality around these wells. It's a large problem here, and it's one that we don't necessarily have the state money for. We don't necessarily have the federal money for, even though we're seeing increases in state and federal funding to deal with some of these problems. But, you're also looking at issues of PFAS chemicals getting in water that are basically substances that are left over in that come from a lot of different household products, from Teflon pots and pans to all sorts of things you'll find in the house. So Pennsylvania essentially has a very long-running, decades-long trend from industrial uses, from just home uses of environmental impacts across the Commonwealth, basically. There is a good amount of attention being thrown on a lot of these topics, all of these issues, but we have a long way to go to fixing even a majority of these.
You had some conversation with former DEP Secretary Patrick McDonnell, and he spent many years dealing with these very issues, cleaning up after environmental disasters that had happened decades ago. And in the case of abandoned wells, those have been, some of them around for a century. So he said that it's not even just the money, which, of course, to address some of these problems, you're billions of dollars. You're in the vicinity of billions and billions of dollars that would almost be impossible for the state to come up with. And so he said that there's even more challenges on top of that. For reference, DEP is one of our bigger departments. They have over 2,000 employees. They have a pretty big budget, and still the resources are lacking to address some of these problems. Will you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. So when we're looking at this, just taking one example comes from looking at essentially natural gas and fracking. There's a long-running problem of just this culture of non-compliance with a lot of these state regulations on ensuring, wells are capped or just filing basic information with the department. So that's been an issue. But another big issue has just been manpower, of not having enough people working for DEP who can just go out and, physically observe the sites and make sure that all the laws and regulations are being filed, everything is in order. And that's been a big issue. If you watch any of the budget hearings that DEP has had with the House or Senate in recent years, there's been a big focus on staffing and the need to expand the budget to hire more staffers, simply to make sure that these environmental harms are not or as low impact as possible, and making sure we're still getting these economic benefits of development for natural gas, but not unduly affecting the air, the water, the soil, anything like that. So that's been a big issue here of making sure that companies are following the laws, either state or federal, and also just being able to double check things and make sure that, we have the watchdog for Pennsylvania's environment.
Keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Anthony Hennon, this is Kristen Smith. Please subscribe and thanks for listening.